This video is sponsored by CuriosityStream. When you sign up at the link in the description, you also get access to Nebula, a streaming video service that City Beautiful is a part of. You've probably seen these articles on newsstands or news feeds. The best places to live in America. The best places to retire. The best small towns. The best places for families. It seems like everyone is developing rankings of cities based on certain criteria. But there's one list that predates the web and continues on to the present. It's Money Magazine's Best Places to Live, and it's been published every single year since 1987. Its latest edition names Clarksville, Tennessee as the absolute best place to live in the United States. Money Magazine also lists the 99 other cities that crack its top 100. I have fond memories of driving into Madison, Wisconsin to visit my extended family and seeing a sign proclaiming Madison as the best place to live in America in 1996. Back then, I felt like Money Magazine must know what they're talking about, because Madison is a gorgeous city with plenty of nice people like my grandparents. But do they know what they're talking about? How much stock should we put in these rankings? Are they useful to anyone? Spoiler alert, the answer is no. In this video, we're going to do a geeky deep dive into the Money Magazine rankings to figure out why they're not all that useful, and why you probably already live in the best place there is, or at least have visited there. Let's start this video by having a look at the most recent crop of best places from 2019. You may notice a few things right off the bat. I'm guessing that if you're not from the United States, you're not going to recognize many of these names. These are all small cities, not major cities like New York, Los Angeles, or Chicago. This is by design. Money only considers cities with populations greater than 50,000 people and less than 300,000 people, though every so often they look exclusively at small towns. Cities with populations above 300,000 people can have neighborhoods on the list, but not the entire city itself. So Chicago is actually in the top 10, but only the Fulton River District, a neighborhood of about 7,600 people just northwest of the Chicago Loop. It may seem strange to intermingle neighborhoods with separate cities, but I actually don't mind this. It's way better than it used to be. Money used to not include big cities in the ranking at all, and instead had a best big cities list alongside their other list. That felt even more arbitrary and dismissive of big cities. This change at least begins to address one of the major critiques of the best places lists, that it favors suburbs. I mean, it still does, but you can make an argument that urban neighborhoods are comparable to the suburbs. They're both subsections of a larger metropolitan area, often with similar populations. Is there truly a major difference between Rogers Park, a neighborhood in Chicago, and Evanston, Illinois, a separate city just across the border? Not really. How else do they narrow down their cities to choose a top 10 and ultimately the one best place to live? Well, they tweak their methodology each year, but the description from 2008 is the clearest I've found and representative of a typical year. First, they gather up all of the US cities with a population between 50,000 and 300,000 people. In 2008, they didn't do the neighborhood thing, so they had 716 cities. They then excluded retirement communities, cities that have a median income below 85% and above 200% of the state's median, and communities that are greater than 95% white. This basically ensures that cities aren't white millionaire enclaves, but places where your average waiting room reader could theoretically live. This screen cuts the number of cities to 544. That number drops to 332 when they filter out cities with high crime, large declines in population, high unemployment, and long commutes. It would be fascinating to look at their data and see which cities they're cutting at this phase. My guess is they're cutting Midwest cities like Flint, Michigan, Akron, Ohio, and Rockford, Illinois, if they weren't already screened out by the low median incomes. The number drops to 100, the list they actually publish, after further filtering by criteria such as housing prices, school quality, job growth, arts and leisure options, and other livability factors. I think it's fair to assume that a place with 2-hour commutes or 20% unemployment is not a great place to live. But the criteria for getting a city in the top 100 is a lot less clear-cut. School rankings are notorious for being bad predictors of actual school quality, for example. And arts and leisure is pretty subjective. Park acreage may be important to some, but a ballet or symphony orchestra may be important to others. Simply quantifying them risks missing any real nuance. From its top 100, Money Magazine then selects its best place to live. They select a couple dozen cities to send reporters to in person to interview residents and get a sense for certain intangible features, like a sense of community. This is where this process loses any semblance of impartiality. This editorial step means the best places to live are chosen by humans. Humans who have a bias towards choosing new and novel places every year to drive headlines. I mean, how boring would it be if the same city was chosen year after year? But it sort of makes sense that the best place to live last year would probably also be the best place to live this year. I mean, the underlying fundamentals of a city doesn't change that much year in and year out. You'd sort of expect one or several cities to dominate, sort of like the English Premier League. And there are Manchester United and Chelsea cities in these rankings, the ones that are perennial contenders. So which cities are getting Champions League berths, to extend this soccer metaphor? I'm looking at the rankings from the past 15 years. Let's first list the cities that have made the top 10 4 times. They are Eden Prairie, Minnesota, Chanhassen, Minnesota, Middleton, Wisconsin, Naperville, Illinois, and Fishers, Indiana. All of these are Midwestern suburbs. They must combine low cost of living, high amenity scores, good schools, and have enough diversity to make the cut. Suburbs of Minneapolis like Eden Prairie and Chanhassen appear on the list so often that it seems like Money Magazine is basically recommending the Twin Cities area generally. And I think that's probably a good way of looking at the places that make these kind of lists. These suburbs may have booming economies of their own, but more likely they're home to many commuters who work in the central city, and their city's own success is due to being in a major metropolitan area. Money Magazine is basically picking out the nicest, most affordable places in prosperous metro areas. Now on to the top 3. With 5 appearances in the last 15 years is Papillion, Nebraska. Now, I pride myself on knowing a lot of US cities, but I must admit that until now, I had never heard of Papillion, Nebraska. It's a small suburb of 18,000 people on the outskirts of Omaha. It's a fast-growing area and 93% white, just making the 95% cutoff. In second place is Louisville, but not in Kentucky. Louisville, Colorado. And I'm guessing there they pronounce it Louisville? Let me know in the comments. In some ways, it's pretty similar to Papillion. It's on the outer ring of Denver's suburbs and it's growing quickly. It's 91% white and fairly affluent, with median family incomes above $90,000. Which city takes the title and has the most appearances in the Money Magazine list over the last 15 years? That honor goes to Columbia/Ellicott City, Maryland. These communities have appeared on the list 7 times in 15 years. 5 times listed together with a slash, and once each as separate communities. They're larger suburbs in the Baltimore area. Ellicott City has about 65,000 people, while Columbia has nearly 100,000. Despite the city in the name, Ellicott City is an unincorporated, census-designated place, but it's been in existence since before the Revolutionary War. It has a historic main street made for a magazine cover photo. Columbia, just to Ellicott City's south, was a planned community designed in the 1960s by shopping mall magnate James Rouse. He conceived of the idea of festival marketplaces, including ones in Boston, New York, and Portland. Perhaps unsurprisingly, the centerpiece of Columbia is a shopping mall. It's actually a really interesting city and maybe worth a video of its own someday. So, if you're looking for the best place to live in America and believe in the Money Magazine ratings, you probably can't go wrong with Columbia/Ellicott City, Maryland, or any of the Twin Cities suburbs. Those are the places that Money Magazine ranks highly most consistently. But consistency isn't Money Magazine's strong suit. In fact, the real story here is wild inconsistency. Of the cities mentioned so far, only Fishers, Indiana makes the top 10 this year. It gets even more shocking when you consider the top 100. Columbia is number 20, but Louisville and Papillion aren't even in the top 100. Not even in the top 100! These are both in the top 10 as recently as 2015. Like I said, the Money Magazine methodology changes a little year to year, but the methodology must have changed massively to freeze out those 2 perennial contenders, the Chelsea and Arsenal of the best places lists. You'll notice that Madison, Wisconsin is in the top 10. It was the best place to live in 1996 and did well on the lists in the 1990s, then fell off the top 100 lists entirely for years. Middleton, a suburb, appeared on the list instead. Finally, Madison is back. Now, I don't know everything there is to know about Madison, Wisconsin, but I've been there pretty frequently since the 1980s, and it has been and probably always will be a college and government town. The fundamentals of Madison just don't change that significantly. It's why I'm so skeptical of the Money Magazine rankings. So where does that leave us? Is there any way to rank cities and determine the best one? I'd argue that's an impossible task. The cities they choose seem to be their view of the best places for white middle to upper middle class families with the ability to move. But most Americans don't fall into that criteria. What about a single person just graduating college? Or empty nesters? Or dual income no kids households? They all have different needs, and there's no consistency between these groups. In the end, the best place to live really comes down to personal preference, where you think is the best place to live. And I'd wager that's probably where you're living right now, where you've lived in the past, or where you might move to in the near future. Why? Because you've probably already put down some roots, have a social network, and maybe even some family. That's really more important than the great schools in Louisville, Colorado. And you're not going to move there because Money Magazine told you to. There are great schools everywhere. I'm guessing most people would be happy living within 100 miles of where they are right now. But it is tempting to do a Money Magazine style ranking, and I've put together my own list, and it's a little bit different than Money's. I've looked at the entire world, not just the United States, and I've organized it more like an award show. I really want to tell you what I think is the City Beautiful Best City 2020, but you'll have to check it out on Nebula. Nebula is where I post additional content on videos and Nebula original videos, like my video on the history of ancient Rome and this video on the Best City 2020. And I'm not the only creator on Nebula. There are dozens of thoughtful creators posting exclusive and ad-free content for you to check out. One of my favorites is Tom Scott's Money, which is basically a game theory game show. My wife and I binge watched it. It's awesome. Nebula is great, and it's made even better thanks to our partnership with CuriosityStream. CuriosityStream is the source for high-quality, engaging documentaries. They make thoughtful content, we make thoughtful content on YouTube, and you can get it all for one super low price. We have a deal where if you sign up for CuriosityStream using the link below, you get Nebula for free. That's not a free trial, but free as long as you're a CuriosityStream member. And they're running a promotion right now. You get an annual plan for 26% off. That's less than $15 per year for both CuriosityStream and Nebula. Signing up is a great way of supporting this channel, as well as the other creators working to make Nebula a success. It's also just a really great deal too, so go click on the link in the description and get 26% off.